How long you back?
I'm not. I gotta be heading back. I was just supposed to pick up some stuff for Hill. Ever since Dad passed, she can't bring herself to come back.
Shit, you could barely bring yourself to come back even when your old man was alive and well.
Hey, it's Kevin, Scott, how are you doing? Nice to speak to you.
I'm good, man.
Good to see you.
So, thanks very much for speaking to me, and a huge congratulations on the film. It just, wow, I love it so much. Everything, the acting, the editing, the writing, it's just, I loved it. And you can see the other interviews. This, I'm not just saying this. I absolutely loved it.
Oh, that's
That's
very sweet.
awesome.
Thank you.
So, I mean, first of all, I want to go right back because I know it started life as a short film, no Dandelion, which there's a mention of in the film. There's no spoilers, I don't think. So, can you tell me a little bit where that idea came from? Because I think it came just post-COVID, kind of. That short was just post-COVID, I think. So, I'm imagining that you were kind of reminiscing and wanting to get back with your family and things like that and friends. And I imagine that's kind of where it all sprouted from, no?
Just some
Yeah, I mean, definitely it was about, yeah, I mean, it was definitely from, I'm sure that COVID had something to do with the kind of like loneliness of it all, but it did. It came from us wanting to go back to kind of our roots of making content with people we love and making movies with our friends. And so we knew that the short is something that we could that was accessible to us, that we could fund, and we used that as a proof of concept to get the feature going.
Yeah, and shot in my hometown for the for the short in Northern California. So we used a lot of locations that were very similar, and then Scott and I had worked together on a feature that was produced by Chicago Media Angels, and then they were interested in the feature for this. So they funded it and believed in us, and we shot it in rural Illinois.
And from the word go, was it up? Did you always intend for you to be the writers, directors, and the kind of the stars in the film? Mainly because I want to know what the writing process was like, knowing that you were going to be kind of on screen portraying this very homegrown, very raw and intimate film in a way, I guess, because it's kind of a lot. I mean, just like the character in the film, Louis, because he's written things and because it's kind of people are complaining about what he's written. I imagine that writing this was in its way your kind of way of getting things out of your system as well, and that must have kind of been quite a kind of a conflicting process, no?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the fact that it shoots at one point at a dirt track, my uncle owned and operated a dirt track, which we
Right.
used to get the location when we shot the short and everything. And Louis so much is like a worst case scenario for me to be a writer who I write so much from a perspective of where I'm from, and to delude yourself into thinking that you're an authority on that, and then to from just the jump when he enters that world and realize that he's not, he's confronted with Travis, and then this like endless list of characters who kind of show that he has no idea what he's talking about. It is kind of a fear that you lose all grip on reality. So yeah, there was a lot there for me. But I have had some friends back home watch it, and I've been like, is this all right? Yeah.
That's what I was going to say, because I mean, I imagine you must have been second guessing yourself quite a bit because
Yeah. Yes,
you must have
still
been
do.
very conscious that you knew that you were writing about things maybe that you didn't necessarily intend to, but then when you saw it on maybe on the screen or on the page, you're like, hang on, that's Auntie whoever, or that's Uncle whoever. No, yeah.
Yeah. There are some of those, but I was hoping that, they were amalgams. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a lot of there is some of that, but I definitely wanted to be very, very careful with that. So sending it to my buddies and being like, where am I at with this stuff? This feeling all right? They
Mhm.
liked it.
Uh-huh. So, I mean,
God.
because it's your homegrown baby now, this film. Scott, I wonder when you got involved in the feature film, because it was so them. How did you kind of integrate yourself, and how did they help you to integrate yourself into this film?
Yeah, well, like Kevin said, he and I did a movie probably 9 months before we did the short film up in his hometown. And Kevin and I spent a better part of a month together, and we were shooting in the lockdown. So we were all staying and shooting in one house. So Kevin and I got to know each other pretty well. And like they said, they just wanted to do something where we could, play with our friends. And I was lucky enough to be in that group. And um, you know, I obviously fell in love with the script that he sent me for the short, and when we did that in the summer of 21, it was a much smaller idea, but I felt like I gravitated towards the Louis character pretty quickly. And then when the feature came around, it was really expanded. It was a really big collaborative effort on the three of us. I mean, I got to get into the minds of them, and we all
It
got to
wasn't
play,
written for
which
Scott,
I think was
Yeah.
great.
It was written
Oh,
for
was it what,
Scott.
sorry?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, Scott's a producer too. So
Yeah.
it was kind of like we all kind of hit it together from our separate, places and created
Yeah, there's
those
definitely some getting to know Scott. There are all these really great things that he can do. There are some awesome strengths that we wanted to play towards, and so he had a huge hand in kind of molding that role to him as well. Yeah, it was great.
Can you share some of those kind of traits that you wanted to bring into the film that you probably
talked
weren't there
about this
before
a
he came
little
on board?
Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit, but he's just so good at playing like uncomfortable and uneasy.
Well, he's catching up to what's
Yeah.
going on.
Oh, wow. Okay. Like that ATV stuff when he's like, "Where's the and the like all that is just so funny to
He's
me."
also Scott is so charming as a person
Yeah.
that we can get away with a lot with him. So it's like we can have him saying certain things that for like if he said them, we'd be like, what? Like if Travis said those things, you'd be like, good Lord. But Scott can say them in a way that you're like kind of confused about, was that like he's so charming? Was that nice or not? Like
I know. I don't know if I hope people get certain elements of those jokes too, because whether they do or not, there's nothing they can do. But there's things that are strictly performance that are coming from Scott that are so funny to me. When he is going to the races and Kevin Miller, the character, goes, "Are you here for the fair?" And he goes, "Huh? No." And then there's just a silence after that. Like, no, I'm just home
it's
for.
Just no, and he just doesn't want to even elaborate.
But it's
like,
it's so
it gets me every
dismissive,
time.
and it's so funny. It's purely Scott. It's very he has a lot of ability.
Scott took so much great ownership over that character that everything he did felt so in line with Louis. So it was, that's what was so nice about collaborating with somebody from the very beginning, is that like you can let them kind of find the point of that character. Really well.
Oh, exactly. I mean, that was something I'd written down here. There's just like the certain looks and gazes and silences in the film. Well, what really carried it along so much more than any of the dialogue as well, obviously, but some of the things were just in the looks, especially like you said, where these glances and looks and silence. It kind of it made it funny, but at the same time, it added a kind of unease to the whole film. You knew there was something dark going on there all the way through. Was that something that you talked about to kind of, because there is this underlying, I don't want to give anything, but there's this underlying thing going on there that's kind of it's uneasy. That must have been not easy to kind of keep going throughout the whole film, though, because it's like you said, there's lots of comedy in there, and there's lots of like really kind of friendly conversations, reminiscing and stuff. But there's this constant unease all the way through. Was that something that you kind of intended to have there all the time?
Certainly, yeah. We talked a lot about that from every aspect of making this film, whether it was from what people were wearing to what you were seeing, to the shots and the style of the shots, to the color, to the sound. Everything, what I would use to describe is that it's kind of this like slow stomach ache where you're not really sure why you feel gross, but you do. And I wanted, from a shot standpoint, it was important to me that we have this is how I always describe it, is that we have these kind of bucolic, big long lens frames, but then there's like a little bit of darkness at the edge that you can just feel that something is beautiful looking, but it's kind of rotting at the edges. And you get this kind of, and to me, that's like what a giant theme in this film is, nostalgia. And that's what nostalgia feels like. It is this kind of sickening sweet thing, but you can't live too long in it because it doesn't exist anymore, and it can pull you down with it. So it kind of has that feeling of that slow kind of descent into something that we were very conscious of while making this, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Something else that I imagine you must have been very conscious of, because it's very, very difficult to pull off people playing drunk or drugged, and kind of like throughout the film, you're pretty much off your tits the whole way through. So, but that is a really, really difficult thing to pull off. So how did you go about that? Just like method practice, no? Because I
Yeah.
know it can come off either really corny, really cheesy, or it can come off really, really well. And I don't know why, but
Let's
you pulled it off really, really well.
let's just say, I had some experience to draw from. But it's fun to play that and to see where you can go with it. To me, that's it's super enjoyable. But you also don't want to make it too, uh, even though we've used the word slapstick, you don't want it to become unbelievable. And I think that was like finding the line there is like finding the gradient that he goes from 0 to 100, and obviously it gets more and more and almost sort of spirals out of control without being unbelievable, and that was the something that we all talked about together too.
Yeah, and I think also that kind of feeling of falling further and further behind the engine.
Yeah.
Like I think it's like, while he is, he is inebriated and there is a modicum of like slurriness and all of that. What you get more and more is that he's struggling to catch up. He's struggling to catch up with what's going on, and the point gets further and further and further away from him. So I think it's like that's the feeling also of like losing time and things like that. That's so uneasy feeling.
And Scott does this thing throughout the movie, especially when he's at his most wasted and times where his eyes are wide and he's just like,
Trying to see.
just trying trying to adjust to this ice
Hovering
bath.
there,
Yeah,
yeah.
he can't get a grip.
And I want to go back to the unease again, because it wasn't just the acting, like the eyes and the things I was, but also I felt that the editing and the music really kind of blended in perfectly to all of that. I imagine the three of you worked very, very closely to. You had two editors, no, and a composer. How closely did you work with them? And what kind of working process did you have then to make sure that this unease that I was talking about earlier kind of really, really bled out of the screen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, our editors are amazing. Chris Hurt and Josef Edinger, two incredibly communicative and expressive editors. I think it was really important that we all be on the same page as far as like the comps and like the things that I always say I'm a very derivative director. So I consume lots and lots of movies and I use lots and lots of references. And so being able to say to Michael Cronin, who was our incredible composer, I want something tonal that is that gives you that feeling of stomach ache, disease, that while we're using these like Americana instruments, we're using them in a way that feels slightly off. And so there is that kind of like the dissonance of that. It really works well, I think.
That worked really well. And when they went to see the rodeo, for example, just before when they're entering that music just works so perfectly there.
Yeah. And it's just that kind of like using those minor chords, but in the way that we use them. And honestly, the note that I gave him every time he would send me a new track is simplify, take more out and let it drone, let those things kind of build, because I think that it is, who was it? Philip Glass? Or no, it wasn't. It was, the biggest composer of all time. He did The Dark Knight.
Oh,
Oh my God.
Zimmer.
Oh, yes,
Zimmer,
Hans Zimmer.
yeah.
Wow. So Hans Zimmer, he when he talks about creating the score for Joker, he talked about how can I create an emotional score using a single note? And he took a note and he bent it and droned it and vibrated it in a way that you feel yourself being pulled closer to, the screen, and you're holding your breath. And there's this, and that is so powerful. And I'm such a nerd for music, for scores, and I'm such a nerd for sound, that the building of that stuff is like, I feel like it is integral. Like we couldn't have gotten there with just the acting. That stuff is even the color was important in that.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but I'm really interested about how you got to that place that you've got to get to in this film. Obviously, I imagine you didn't have these musical cues on hand. So how was there any kind of musical cues or any specific way that you kind of tapped into that?
Yeah, I mean, the story is so good, right? And we had lived with this character for over a year now, really, because we had done the short film before, and then a year later doing the feature. So I I'd had plenty of time with the character, and so we've said before, sort of, when you're doing an independent film in 15 days, it's not super hard to feel that unease and tension because you're already like, it's every day, you're up at the crack of dawn working all day and hoping you make your day. And so, just, it wasn't hard to get to the point of that, and obviously I got to work with some great people that were a huge support cast for me. So I had all the tools necessary to get there. And, I think we did a good job. So yeah, it was
when you dump somebody in cold water in the middle of the night in a fairground, they really dig. They have to, that stuff is right there.
That's
pretty visceral.
Brilliant. So listen, I want something more very serious. I want to talk. I mean, obviously, it talks about mental health and things like that, but also it does touch on bullying and the long-term effects of bullying, because right through from when you were a kid, right through to adulthood. I'm curious where the idea to include that in the scripts came from, and was there any specific kind of anything that you specifically want to get off your chest there, and just kind of as catharsis?
No, I was definitely bullied a lot and had to fight a lot. So there was something.
He says fight, he means with
physically, yeah. I had my first fight, I was like 5. And like it definitely a lot of fighting. But I think also there's this, there's the JJ of it. And then there's like, as far as Louis' relationship with that and feeling like he can't let go of that. I also like I put this thing in there that was everyone saying that, oh, you got taller, because I was really, really short.
Yeah. Right.
So, like this idea that they can't, and that could be from Louis' POV, that they are always seeing him as that small,
same guy,
helpless kind of kid. And this, like I still have these dreams too, where there's a few bullies that I had that would pin me down and smack the hell out of me, and it's like I still have dreams where it's like you're down there. So it's like this idea of being unable to let go of really
needing to prove,
and and the bully really being the place for Louis. Like the place is the bully. Like he has an adversarial, confrontational relationship with where he's from and feels like it's always beating up on him. And so here he is creating distance between that place and himself, where he can write about it and bully it back. And so now he's the bully when he comes back, where like Lainey says, like, you're kicking it. Why are you kicking this place when we're on our knees? Like it seems like so distasteful. So it's like, and for him, he's like, oh, wait, what? Like I think a lot of times as artists, and that you forget kind of sometimes the power you have. If you throw someone's name out there, you have quite a bit. So it's, I think Louis always feels like the score is uneven, and feels like he's playing from behind,
I'm sorry you went through that. I mean, I'm also sorry that you still have nightmares about it, but at the same time, I mean, I couldn't help. I felt that the film was almost a message to say that, it continues all the way through. This bullying stays there. I've got memories of kids who weren't particularly kind to me at school as well, and I still wake up about it. But at the same time, it felt like you were trying to say that it's also really important to just let it go and forgive them and let bygones be bygones. I also got that message from the film as well. Was that something that you were trying to say?
I like that, like, JJ has this little moment at the end where he goes, I'm a veteran. Like, I mean, there's this thing that he just doesn't know about him. Like that JJ went and lived a life. And if anything, here he is, a fully grown, fleshed out person who's the adult really out of a lot of these people. Gets bullied the entire movie. And then gets bullied, so it's like, there's so much of these people, you have to let go, because you're not an authority on their story. You don't know their story, even though he wrote him a certain way. He has no idea what happened to JJ from the time that Louis left to the time that he's gotten back.
And you don't get to, and it's also about you are not allowed to categorize other people. You can say what they were to you, but you don't get to tell them who they are. And I think that that's what, even from the people who are the bullies or the people who are being bullied, both are true. Like I think artists, we were all, I don't know, maybe not everybody was, but we were all kind of teased for being artists as kids. And you were kind of part of that outside group, and you had to find your home in the art community. So even though we're making films now, we'll always be the nerds. We'll always be on the outside of the cool kids, and like it doesn't go away, you know. And I think that like it's about just taking responsibility for your feelings around that, and not just writing things and people off because of it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Exactly,
interesting because nobody's really talked to us about the bullying aspect
Yeah,
of it. But
I'm really glad you picked up on that.
Listen, well, just to finish off, then they're asking me to wrap. So just to finish off, it's a great film as a standalone, but at the same time, I kind of felt like it left a few kind of questions and things unanswered. Obviously, it doesn't need a sequel, but I would love to see kind of a sequel and see the roles reversed with the people from the town going to where Louis lives.
Oh,
Is that something you'd ever thought of?
Okie 2 Electric Boogaloo, Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that while we would all love to have it tied up, I think for us, I like the nebulous nature that it ends on personally, because
Sure.
I think it's also a bit of a cautionary tale about, you know, if you alienate your past and you alienate your future, where does that leave you?
Mhm.
And so I think that that's kind of I think that's kind of where we wanted to let it lie. Although I know, you know, people always love when things are tied up, but I do think that like, I do think that there could be a very interesting role reversal there someday. If we wanted
No,
to.
it's just I just love the characters so much. I just didn't want it to end, honestly.
Yeah.
Really great. Yeah. I'd love for Travis just to stroll up to Hollywood and
Appreciate
come on there, Lou. It'd be great.
Oh, God.
Well, listen, I've got to go, sadly. I could speak to you for hours about the film. It's so good. Congratulations once again. I hope you have the best of success with the film when it comes out. And I hope to speak to you again sometime soon about something else.
Yeah, thank
Absolutely.
you, Howard.
All the
Thank
very
you.
best, guys. Really nice to speak to you. All right, have a good day. Take care. Bye now.
Come on, man. It's better than kicking up the old bones.
How long have I been here?